What's going on? It's Coach Williams, and I'm back for another breakdown. So today we are going to talk press technique. I've gotten through all the corners. I'm going to start doing all these breakdowns. So I want to talk about press technique because I've been reading a lot of articles after I read guys and after I watch guys and they're like, this guy can press, this guy's a technician, and I don't necessarily agree with it, right? Or this guy can't press, this guy's really raw with his technique. And I'm like, he looks pretty good to me on tape. So I want to give you an understanding when you're watching my breakdowns of what I'm looking for, what I think is really good press technique, how I was taught it, and how I teach my corners today, okay? So why not start with the ultimate technician, Christian Gonzalez? All right, so we're in NFL Pro era in VR, and so I want to show you a couple of things that I look at in press technique and how I teach it. So anyone that's ever played DB for me knows that I always say, just like quarterbacks in press man-to-man coverage, us cornerbacks have a progression, all right? And so the way that our progression works is eyes, feet, and hands, okay? Eyes, feet, hands. So it starts with the eyes, and you can't play press man-to-man coverage if your eyes aren't right. So just like Gonzo is right here, we have our eyes down there on the receiver's hip, okay? We want to make sure that we're looking at the receiver's hip because if you look at his head, you look at the headgear, they can do all kinds of head fakes, the shoulders, the numbers, all that stuff. They can move that. Like Shakira said, the hips don't lie, all right? So you got to watch the hips, watch those, and that's going to tell you where the receiver is going to break to, okay? The next piece is the feet, and we'll talk a little bit more about the feet when we go over to Jonathan Jones, but we want to go in this balanced stance right here, okay? So what I mean by balance is I want these feet, right, balanced on top of each other. I don't want a stagger stance. I want my feet balanced just like Gonzalez is right here, okay? And so we'll talk a little bit more, like I said before, about it, but we want to take really small, choppy 6-inch steps. We don't want a false step. We want to have these nice feet here, and we want to be quiet with our feet, but active, okay? And I'll explain a little bit more about that later, okay? The next piece is the hands. And so if you've been on my YouTube channel or on my Twitter for a long time, you've probably heard the spiel before, but if you're new to it, this is what we talk about with the hands here in press man-to-man coverage, all right? And I always tell my DBs, I can tell you this, I can explain it to you until the cows come home. You're not going to listen unless you feel it. So if you want to pause the video and try this out as I'm explaining it to you, you're really going to be able to understand what we're talking about, okay? So let's get down in our stance like this, okay? Nice balanced stance, okay? And so let's say that the ball has been snapped and we're going to jam the receiver and we're using two hands, okay? So we're trying to jam this receiver with two hands like this, okay? And let's say he breaks to the outside and I try to turn and open my hips and you can feel that stretch in your hips. It's really hard, especially if you're flexing those triceps really hard. It's not comfortable. It's not a comfortable position to be in, okay? So now let's do the same thing, but let's put this hand up. So this is the opposite hand since he's breaking that way. And then if you turn and open your hips, see how much easier that is, right? It's way easier when you do that. When you jam with two hands, you're going to lock your hips out. So it's going to be really hard to be able to press a guy like that, okay? You might see some tape where guys are doing that and they're jamming guys with two hands or whatever, and they're winning the rep. But in the NFL, when you're going up against really good receivers, if you jam with two hands too many times, your hips are going to get locked out, especially if the guy is fast and he's going to run right by you, okay? So you want to make sure that you jam with one hand. You jam with this hand, right? Opposite hand. You can bring the next one. If you get a really good jam, you flatten him out and he can't get up the field. You can bring that next hand up. And that's where you see the real highlight plays, right? Where guys are driving people into the ground, throwing them down, driving them into the sideline and stuff like that. So those are times that you want to jam with two hands. Also, there's the highlight plays like choke technique. You know, I love choke technique, right? Where you get into the guy and grab him right off the snap and shock him, right? But that's not something that you're going to live in. You're not going to live in two-hand jamming. You are going to protect yourself, and you're going to get enough of a reroute and disrupt it enough if you jam with that one hand, okay? So let's go down over here to Jonathan Jones, okay? And let's talk about the feet, all right? So feet, okay? Like I said before, we want to keep our feet inside of the frame. And what I'm looking for a lot of time when I'm watching film on these guys is I want to see if guys false step, okay? So what's a false step? A false step to me is when you take one of your feet and you move them forward, right? You take them out of the frame. I've heard a coach say, you don't want your feet to get outside of your Madden circle, right? So if you step forward like that when you're pressing with one foot, you're going to be off balance. All right. So you can step outside of the frame laterally, right? So if you get pushed to the outside, you got a skate step. So that's fine, right? But you don't want to false step and try to get back, right? You can go backwards, but it's got to be, like I said, quiet yet active. We can be active pitter-pattering our feet backwards, right? But we don't want to false step like that. And again, like I said, I can explain it to you until the cows come home. But if I make you feel it, you're going to understand. All right. So first we'll watch and you'll see this. I see a lot of that from some of these guys on tape that I'm watching right now. Okay. If you see that and somebody's calling them a technician, that is not technique right there, right? And it's even the same body position, right? This does not look balanced. Doesn't look like you're going to be able to balance yourself, right? Not a good position to be in. And again, I can explain it to you, but if you feel it, you'll understand, okay? So we're going to get our feet like this, right? And this is a snap, second ball's a snap, and it's just a reaction that your feet go like that, right? So now if you have your feet like this and you try to turn and open, right? Try that, right? You can even put the opposite hand up. If you try to turn and open again, your hips are totally locked out. This is not a good position to be in, right? You don't want to have your feet and your feet staggered like this, and you don't want to have your hips being locked out, right? That's not a good position to be in. Now, if we get a nice balanced stance, we put that opposite hand up, okay? And we get the outside release and we turn, right? Much more comfortable. So we can open with this leg, right? If we have to skate step, we can skate step, right? And then we turn off this foot, right? We can turn off this foot and use it as a tourniquet. It's much more comfortable when you're in that position. If you end up like this, you're going to be on your heels, off balance, and you, my friend, if you're going up against the Garrett Wilsons of the world, are going to get beat, okay? So these are some of the things that I look at on tape. This isn't everything. There's a lot more to press technique, like opening the gate. That's something that I talk about a lot in my videos. There's other pieces to the progression, right? When you get upfield, you're trying to squeeze guys to the sidelines. But this progression, this early piece, the early phase of the down, those are the three most important things. Eyes on the receiver's hip, feet quiet but active, and striking with the opposite hand. So if he goes inside, I'm going to strike with this hand. Goes outside, I'm going to strike with that one, right? That is what you have to be able to do on a consistent basis to be able to win and press. Then you can learn some more advanced techniques. You watch some guys that are able to do some more advanced stuff. It's because they got the basics, the progression down early, okay? So there's some guys that people are saying, oh, he's raw. He doesn't really have good press technique. I watch him, I go, hey, looks pretty good to me. There's other guys where they're like, he's a technician. He's an ultimate technician. I watch them and they're doing that, right? So now you're armed with that. You can watch film on your own, come to your own judgment, scout guys, read articles and be like, okay, yeah, that guy knows what he's talking about. You can read another article and be like, I don't know, not necessarily, right? So now you're armed with that information from a coach, from a college football coach. This is how I teach press technique, and this is how I evaluate corners. So as always, you know what it is. It's Coach Williams, Ball Hawks. We fly. I'm out. Peace.